So now we've sampled all our records, and it's time to perform some edits. Well, first of all, let's have a bit of a listen and see what we've got. So first sample, drum loop. Then we've got, what have we got there? Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, so we've got a range of samples that we've actually grabbed. It's a bit of funky drums going on in there. And then, what have we got? Let me just sort of zoom out a bit. By the way, while I do this, I will also show you quite a few shortcuts. Oh yeah, that's that disco one. And that's a pretty cool one actually, with the vocals and the. All right. Cool. All right. Well, let's start with the drums to begin with. Okay. So one of the things that you may need to do, make sure that you've got this little button turned on. That's in what is called the keyboard focus. So if you haven't got that turned on, make sure that you turn it on. Well, essentially what the keyboard focus does allows you to perform shortcuts using just one key. So for example, if I needed to perform an edit right there, I can simply click on the letter B. Okay, so B, what it does, separates a clip. Okay, so if you simply click on the letter Z, Z is undo. All right, so another thing that you also need to take into account is this. At the moment, as you can see, I'm in minutes and seconds, which is not a musical subdivision. So for the purpose of this, sort of whenever you actually do any music and so on, make sure that you are in bars and beats, okay? And that's that. All right, so first thing first, let's zoom in a bit, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm also going to, can you see that you've got this little button up there? Well, what it does, it zooms in the waveform display. You want to be able to sort of view your waveform nicely, okay? Because otherwise what happens is that if you don't, then you know, you may make mistakes and so on. So also, like I said, it's really, especially when you edit audio, zooming in and zooming out, it's absolutely crucial, okay? So let's have a look. So our sample starts here. There's a whole lot of, so that's the 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, so assuming that we actually just want to grab this section of the sample. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do, we need to find the beginning of the bar, okay? And if we count it, it's the beginning of the bar, it's right there, so which is in fact, it's in fact on the kick drum, okay? So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 1. So we've got 4 bars of drums, okay? So there are several ways that you could possibly edit your sample, okay? Well, number one, you want to make sure that you've got your Smart tool selected, which is this guy right here at the top, okay? So the Smart tool is in fact a combination of the Trim tool, the Selector tool, and the Grabber tool, okay? So there's also another tool, which is the Fade tool, which if you move your, can you see that I've got my grabber right there at the bottom left-hand side? So you can actually, you can sort of, you can turn it into a fade tool, which means they can perform a fade, just like that. All right, so I'm going to undo it, simply clicking on the letter Z. All right, so what I could do to begin with, I can simply grab my sample and then sort of guess more or less, you know, where the beginning of the bar starts. So, but as you can see, it's not terribly accurate, you know, to actually do that. So you want to be 100% sure that your sample starts there at bar 1, beat 1. So easiest way of doing this is simply by engaging what it's called the tab to transient, which is this button up there. So make sure that you turn it on. So the next thing that you want to do, you want to place your timeline literally just before your the beginning of your loop. And the next thing that you need to do is simply click on the tab key on your computer keyboard, and off you go. So, and what happens is that the timeline actually moves in right at the beginning of your transient. Let's have a look. So can you see I'm actually zooming in as much as I can. Now I'm actually at a sample level, and it's really accurate. Okay. So also, just so you know, another really quick tip is that whenever you zoom in and zoom out, so for example, imagine that I've got my timeline all the way down there, right? Pro Tools, what it does, it always zooms in with the timeline in the middle of the screen, which is a brilliant feature, I think. So it's really good. Anyway, so just so you know. So go back to what we had right there. So put my timeline just before the transient, click on tab, click on B, and that's that. All right. Now, the only thing that I need to do really is just delete the portion of the clip that I don't want, and that's it. Okay. Now let's have a listen. Brilliant. That's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So beginning of bar 5 is in fact right there. So I do exactly the same thing. Click on tab, and off I go. Click on B to separate. Select the portion of the audio that I don't want. Delete it, and that's it. All right. Now let's have a look, see if this guy actually loops correctly. So the only thing that I need to do is simply select my clip. Okay. Make sure that your play button is in loop mode. Okay. So if it's not in loop mode, you simply right click on the play button and select loop. Okay. Let's have a listen. Great, perfect. Sounds really good. Okay, now the next thing that we want to do, I kind of think that it's, you know, to actually just be neat, it would be good if you can actually move the clip at the beginning of our arrangement, okay? So the shortcut to actually move the clip at the beginning of our arrangement is simply the letter Y. So click on the letter Y, and off it goes. Okay, and that's that. So the only thing, we've got a bit of a predicament right here. We don't know how, you know, the tempo of our clip. Okay, we don't really know the tempo of our drums. So let's have a look, see how we can actually do that. Now, first of all, I need to go to Window, okay, and I want to select Transport, okay, and here it is. Things that you also want to do in your transport bar, you want to make sure, if you click on this little down arrow, you want to make sure that you've got MIDI controls selected, okay? So in that way, it actually gives you an indication of the tempo of your arrangement. At the moment, it's set to 120, okay? So, but I'm not sure whether this drum loop is 120 BPMs or not. I don't think it is. All right, so the first thing that we need to do, we need to create a click track. So if you go to Track, create a click track, and that's that. All right, well, let's have a listen, see what it sounds like. Nowhere near, okay? So if we want to find the tempo of this clip, this is what we need to do. We need to go to Event, and we need to go to Identify Beat, okay? So we select Identify Beat, and this is what happens, okay? This is quite an important thing that we need to remember. So what Pro Tools sees, it sees that the clip that we've got, that we just selected, starts at bar 1, beat 1. And that's fine, we know that because we actually moved it using our Y shortcut. Now, what about the end location, okay? Where does the end clip, where does the clip finish? Well, it says there that it finishes bar 5, beat 1.3531, whatever that may be, okay? Well, one thing that you need to remember is that if this clip is 4 bars long, yeah, it means that the end of the clip is in fact bar 5, beat 1. Yeah? Remember, this beat is 4 bars long, which means that the end of it, which is there, right, is in fact bar 5, beat 1. Okay, well, let's select the end location of this thing. So it's bar 5, beat 1. Okay, now click OK, and that's it. So now the tempo that Pro Tools has detected is in fact 115.98, whatever, right? So let's assume that it's 116 BPMs. Okay, well, let's have a look and see if it's in fact correct. Perfect. Okay, so we haven't actually, one thing that I really want to point out is the fact that we haven't actually modified the tempo of the clip. The only thing that we've done, we've actually adjusted the tempo of Pro Tools to suit the drum beat that we've got. Okay, and that is that. All right, so things that we also may need to do for the purpose of this sort of stuff, definitely suggest to actually work in grid mode. Okay, simply because in grid mode, then you can sort of move things and there will always be so whenever you actually move things, they will always stick to the grid. Okay, and that is that. Cool, that's the first loop that we've done. Okay, so what have we got there? So obviously this second loop, it's not going to be in time. All right, the second loop is not going to be the same tempo as the previous one because it's a different song. Well, let's have a listen and see what it sounds like. So remember that we actually want to grab and so on. Okay, so let's assume, again, zoom in quite a bit. All right, this time what I need to do, I need to go into sleep mode. The reason why I go into sleep mode at the moment is because I want to be able to move my timeline wherever I want it to be. Okay, because otherwise what happens if you're in grid mode, the timeline will always stick to the grid subdivision. Okay, so I'm going to move into sleep mode. Okay, and then so that's the initial part of our loop, which is there. So it's that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Okay, so same thing. Just go ahead and use your tab, and that's it. And it moves, and your timeline moves exactly where you want it to be. Click on the letter B. Delete this guy that we don't need it. Maybe zoom out a little bit. Just really use your zoom in and zoom out all the time. Really, really important. Let's have a listen. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Okay, so the next edits that we want to perform is literally just down there. All right, doesn't really matter if the timeline is all the way to the end. And so remember that anytime you zoom in, the timeline always moves to the middle of the screen. So I'm going to click on tab again, click on B, select the portion of the clip that I don't want, and off I go. All right, so I'm going to zoom out and let's have a listen. Great, works perfectly. All right, so this is like a just a really quick way to edit loops. All right, other things that you could possibly do, for example. Okay, so imagine that now what I want to do, okay, I want to fit this drum loop with that drum loop. Okay, well, let's have a look. Let's have a look. It's going to be quite an interesting exercise because I think that this loop is at a different tempo than this loop. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to simply go ahead and create a new track, stereo, click on create, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move that clip on the in the second track, okay? Remember your shortcut to move a clip to the beginning of the arrangement, which is in fact the letter Y, okay? And if I zoom in, right? If I zoom in, I can see that this drum loop is actually a bit shorter than that, than the previous one, which means that it's faster. Okay, now here's a really cool little trick. All right, so let's go into grid mode. All right, grid mode like that. And what I'm going to do next, I'm going to see that I've got my trim tool right here. I'm going to click and hold on the trim tool and select TCE, which stands for Time Compression Expansion. Select this tool and check this. Bam. Bam, he says. All right, sorry. Now what I've done, I've actually time stretched this region to match that one. Well, let's have a listen, see what it sounds like now. Great, it works fine, okay? There are a few timing issues here and there, okay? But all the timing issues can be fixed just by using a function which is called elastic audio, which is in fact something I'd like to discuss with you at some other time. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and perhaps just go back to my standard tool and maybe just go ahead and edit some other sounds. Let's say, for example, this one here. So this is actually not a bad sample, because it does give you some kind of like a there is a triangle in there that can provide you with some counting. So it's like 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the triangle in the background sort of helps you out counting the actual length of this clip. So I think we're just going to leave it as is for the moment, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to convert all these clips into proper audio files, okay? And then import them into Logic. So what we can then do, we can sort of use them in a creative and musical way. And that is that.